Rise and shine, Calgary. What a beautiful day to be alive. Today we're on our way to meet two incredible Calgarians who've established themselves as community leaders through their involvement in various business and charitable endeavors. Jim Button and Avnish Mehta. Jim Button has been thoroughly involved in community relations over the past 23 years with his work as co-founder of Village Brewery. Over the past 5 years, Jim has been blog writing about his personal journey initiated by terminal cancer on his website, gatherwithjim.com. Avnish Mehta is a principal at Stand in Command. He is also on the board chair of the Calgary Public Library. And lastly, he is a beer baron at Village Brewery. Gentlemen, welcome to the Culture Roulette.
Hey, this is great. Couldn't find a better spot to do it.
The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. What does this quote mean to you guys?
It's a Mark Twain quote. I used that quote in a presentation I did about 2 years ago. It's really, really valuable that once you decide or determine or find when you have input and ability to help others, which was my discovery moment. And when I found out I was put on this earth to help others, and I think that Mark Twain quote is beautiful because it's so true. Once you discover that day, everything becomes simple, and the world becomes a much more profound place for you.
Do you remember as a child what your first dream was? Because, I never thought that I would be doing what I'm doing today, as a lead concierge, customer service, and commercial real estate from, my humble beginnings, like at the Banff Center as a housekeeper in hospitality. I never thought my journey would take me here, even when I look back as a kid, I looked up to Michael Jordan. I wanted to be in the NBA, That was my first dream. Do you remember that dream when you were a kid, Avnish, Jim, when it all started?
So I remember my dad not endorsing my strategy. My dad's an accountant, a CA, and it's about sort of laser focus, right? Like if you know what you're looking for, then you can sort of reverse engineer how to get there and find other people. And I'm talking about like professionally, just like find other people who have done that job or in that job and figure out what credentials they have, and you sort of just pursuit on a very, systemic way of operating. I didn't. I didn't. My first job was, and I loved it because I told my parents I was getting, like it wasn't sort of encouraged necessarily, but I'm like, I want to go out and work. This is what I want to do. And I was a busboy at Heritage Park. And it's one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. And I worked with an amazing crew and a great manager, and like we ran that place, and it was awesome. I got paid well, and I got sort of, recognized for my abilities, and I won a white hat for being the best busboy in Calgary. Yeah, this is like 96, I don't know what it was, 97, around there. But those are one of those moments where you're like, effort, connection, leadership, like just wanting to get involved. Those are the types of things that are sort of lead to whatever's next, and so my dad's system didn't work for me. It's like, let's just see if I put in the things that I believe, which are sort of honesty and hard work and gumption and desire to want to learn and, like all of those things, then the possibilities become infinite. And that's way more exciting than having like, this is this, and this leads to this, and this leads to this. And so it's funny because even now I feel like my dad tries to guide me in that way. And I'm like,
He's trying to figure out the box still, right?
totally. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we've only known each other 40 years now. That's,
What about you, Jim? What you got?
I never had a singular dream to do anything. I always, I'm the kind of guy that doesn't like to do the same thing over and over again. So I knew that about me. I also knew that I liked making friendships. I also knew that I liked bringing people together. I did know that from an early age, but I never thought that that could actually be something that you just naturally did, could be what your vocation might be. I just did. My dad was an air traffic controller and a navigator. I thought I was going to be an air traffic controller at one point. When I was 13, I had 4 different businesses going at the same time. When I was graduating high school and going into university, similar scenario. I had a disagreement with my dad, who's very linear. You have to be linear as an air traffic controller.
Totally.
But I said I want to be either a psychologist or I want to be in advertising. And he said, well, you're going to have to pick. I said, well, I did. And he says, well, those are 2 different things. I said, no, they're the same thing, 2 different tracks. They're both the studying of human behavior. And he never understood that. I did go into university with a BSc in psychology to be a psychologist or psychiatrist. I wasn't sure which way. And then I drank a lot of beer and got a BA in psychology with a minor in business. And after that, started some more companies after I graduated.
Advertising.
Yeah. Eventually, my first real job, like I was a welder. I was selling door to door, vacuums door to door. I was selling business machines. I was a white water guy. It's the sound of that river right now is just drawing me. I was.
Vacuum cleaners?
I used to sell vacuum cleaners door to door.
What brand? Do you remember?
Electrolux.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay, look that up, folks, on Google.
Trust me, it's a lot of fun. I controlled millions of dollars at the age of 25 for beer. Yeah, it was fun. It was a good job.
I've always shared a connection with the film Wizard of Oz and the character Dorothy, right? And in my life where I felt like her a couple of times, where I find myself meeting, I think of my best friend, Colin Cuthbert. The first time I met him in the prep hall at Earl's Kitchen in Banff. And Dorothy, along her journey on the yellow brick road, she has an immediate affinity for the Scarecrow. She doesn't know why. The Tin Man. She doesn't know why. The Lion. She doesn't know why. And in a parallel universe, in Kansas, those characters are her uncle. Sometimes question, is Colin a friend of mine from a parallel universe, another time, experiencing this reality together? I was in research mode prior to the interview. I almost feel like they must have met maybe in a parallel universe. What are your thoughts around that concept, gentlemen?
Have you figured out when? Do you have an idea of it?
We lived and experienced sort of each other in a very, or we currently do, potentially, if it's sort of a parallel universe and it's happening sort of in the same space as we exist right now. So it feels very military to me in certain ways.
Really?
Yeah, like there's a you are my, you're taking me through the journey, and it's very formal, or it was very formal, depending on sort of how we're doing this. But it was a sort of a deep bond, and I think that our ages are probably the same as in this life. Maybe a little bit more distant. I might be a bit younger, I think. But there is a dynamic there that for sure continues to come back to me.
Because mine's the reverse.
Good.
In mine, you're my guide, right? Which is not unlike, from a spiritual perspective, not unlike what happens in present day for us as well. You know, I think we both are each other's guides, but in this situation, in this other time, I felt like I was more following you. It's quite funny.
Love it.
So in 1998, the Global Consciousness Project was founded at Princeton University, where they could measure the Earth's magnetic fields through random number generation. And in our history, on record, where they could measure heart energy, that magnetic field from heart and emotion, 15 minutes after the first plane hit the World Trade Center, that's when, on measurement, on record, it went off the Richter scale on that chart.
A question tonight, can you actually measure the emotional outpouring in a worldwide crisis?
Sometimes scientists think that they have done just that. Their machines and computers found a bizarre pattern right after several global disasters.
And then on 9/11, it begins not being a drunkard's walk. It goes like this for 2 days.
It may sound bizarre, but Dr. Nelson and his team have been at this for the better part of a decade. The first spike showed up in 1997 with the death of Princess Diana. Other events like the Concorde crash, the Madrid train bombing, and the Pope's funeral all registered on those random number generators. But early on the morning of September 11th, the data went off the charts.
That was proof that we are all connected. We are all one consciousness, one big brain under the umbrella of Mother Earth.
It's a collective consciousness, man.
Jim, can you share the story of the text that you got on April 18th, 2016?
So that day, April 18th, was the day I found out I had terminal cancer. April 18th, obviously, is the day I found out. I was told I had a year to live due to the cancer that had metastasized in my lungs. It was renal cell carcinoma. It had gone from, I'd had my kidney out a year and a half earlier because there was a baseball-sized tumor on it. And so I was in my doctor's office with my wife Tracy and had found out this news. And it's a bit of a shocking moment to be given that news. And so as we were digesting it through the day, I remember a moment where we were sitting on the bed, talking about it, crying, hugging, all those things, and trying to just process what it meant. And I got a text, and I looked at the text, which is pretty abnormal for me in a situation that emotional to actually pick up a phone. But I picked up the phone, I looked at it, and it was a text from Avnish that had said, I hope you don't mind, I took you into a healing session. Actually, I hope you don't mind me telling this story.
No, of course not.
I took you into a healing session, and in it I found dark clouds of your lungs. And they might be serious and you might want to go to see a doctor. It could be just pneumonia or it could be something more serious. And I showed that to Tracy. Now you gotta remember, I'd just been told I had 18 lesions, 18 tumors on my lungs. And then I just got a text that same day saying, you've got dark clouds in your lungs. So at that point, I showed it to Tracy. We both kind of dropped our jaws. And I phoned Avnish and said, Avnish, what gives?
What gives indeed.
And you basically started apologizing. And your apology was, I'm sorry, I should have asked for permission to take you into the healing session. I hope you don't mind. And I said, no, I'm so far past that. Tell me more about it. And so we got into a long conversation about the healing session and what had just transpired. And then the next morning we spent 3 hours in a coffee shop talking about the experience. And what it did for me, there's a number of moments in my life where I've had, in my cancer life, we'll call it, my cancer journey, where I've had these shifts, powerful shifts on how I manage, deal, and accept the journey of living with cancer. And that was the first one that I had, and what it taught me, and what the lesson was, and the purpose of that message was to get back in touch with my spiritual being, to get more in touch with the connectedness of all of us. Things that I already knew and believed and felt, but I'd let go dormant. And since that day, since that moment, I've been very conscious of simple things that the average human would call coincidence, or my decision-making process, or my optimism towards dealing with a terminal disease. And I owe a lot of that, all of that, actually a lot of it. I'm not going to say all of it, because a lot of it has to come from me as well. And we talk often about how the interesting element of that isn't just him sending it. It isn't just me receiving it. Like, there's a lot of complications to somebody sending a text like that. You have to say, will the person accept it? What will they do with that information? What will they think of me if I send this? And I have to also be in an open, because I have to be in an open mind to accept it, I can assume he felt that I would be open to accept it, which I believe you were in sending it. So that made a big difference in my, I truly believe one of the reasons why I'm still here is because of the path that this man started me on. So thank you again.
You're welcome, Jim.
Absolutely.
I love you, man.
I love you too, man. Oh, are you the lion, the tin man, or the straw?
The scarecrow.
Or scarecrow. I guess I'm stuffed with straw and hay right now.
As I'm watching the TEDx YYC that you were on, Jim, and you're talking about mindfulness, you're talking about meditation, where you're talking about the visualization.
Yeah, already.
And
you watch some different computers?
You doubled the amount of views I have.
And you talk about the
buffalo.
Yes.
Yes.
You talk about that visualization. Tell the audience what you were visualizing to gain strength, perhaps in some of the weaker moments that you were experiencing.
Well, in a conversation around visualization, I've learned through practice to try and understand my circumstance, the world, my body more. And so what I did was a friend of mine is a radiologist, and I had him take my scan of my tumor on my pancreas, which is my problem area. I've got the tumors are in my lungs, my pancreas, gallbladder, peritoneal cavity, capsule of my liver. So I've got a lot of them. And but the one that if it's, as my oncologist said, if one's gonna get you, it'll be your pancreas. So I said, okay, I'll focus on the pancreas. And so I had him take a visual, that scan, and superimpose it on a picture of the body. So while I'm meditating and visualizing, I can actually see exactly where it is in my body, and then I can go in and visit the pancreas and the tumor, and it sounds crazy to people, and I appreciate that,
Totally
but it's real, and
It is real.
I hope people can, get there themselves in some way. But when I told this on the TEDx, I actually stopped everybody and I apologized for how far out there is, because what I was doing is I'd go in and one day I would look at the tumor and I would study it, and then the next day I'd go in and all of a sudden I had lightsabers and I had weapons, and I was attacking the tumor. I thought, that's not what I want to.
Was this your saber? Was that the saber right there?
We got props.
Was that the saber, Jim?
It was a lightsaber, just like that, exactly like that. And so I'm lightsabering it, and I've. This is awesome. I didn't even see that over there. I'll look at the river. I'll get centered again. Lightsabering, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that because I've never said I'm fighting cancer. I've never said it's a battle. I don't want to be a survivor. I'm living with cancer, and it just happens to be part of who I am now. And so I called Avnish up and I said, Avnish, I just had this experience where I was attacking, and I don't believe that to be the way I want to approach this. And I said, so what's your advice? And Avnish's spirit animal is a buffalo. And so we were brainstorming on ways to manage this and how to reapproach the pancreas. And he says, what if you had little baby buffaloes? I don't know what baby buffaloes are called, but we'll call them baby buffaloes. Why don't you have baby buffaloes trample upon it? And I said, okay, that's great. So probably about a week later, and I don't really control, I'll go in and try the visualization. And sometimes I will have a scenario like that one time I had this. And then another time I had a visualization where I had all these buffaloes and we were going on a trip to the pancreas. But we get to the pancreas and the pancreas has changed shape. It's now like a mushroom and it's above my pancreas. And I was having some experiences at that time, some very painful experiences with my pancreas. And so I attributed it to what was going on with the pancreas. And we got there and I went, oh no, now the buffaloes can't trample the pancreas. And lo and behold, what happens? My spiritual animal, which was given to me by my wife, or identified by my wife, is a, and this is where I laugh from the TEDx, is a unicorn. So all of a sudden you've got these unicorns coming. It cracks me up even to myself. But this is actually happening. And the unicorns pick up the buffaloes and put them on the pancreas. But as they get up on the pancreas, it's dusty. And I'm fearful of the buffaloes not being able to see the edges and fall off. And I'm laughing and I'm trying to deal with the mayhem of these buffaloes. And then the unicorns go back in and are taking them off. And I come out of this meditative moment or time, no idea how long I was in there, and I walk in the living room because I meditate in the bedroom, and my wife says, what were you laughing about? I said, I was meditating. I explained it to her and she goes, oh my God, who am I married to? What is going on in this world? How did we get here? But that was an honest to goodness moment, and so I told that on TEDx as part of my ability to visualize. I'm glad you brought props. I'm actually
so
laughing with tears in my eyes right now as I say it. But and there's many times I'm in there looking at the pancreas and I'm studying it and trying to figure out, because the problem is my pancreas is blocking my bile duct. Where the tumor is on my pancreas is blocking the bile duct and pancreatic duct, and those things back up, and then I get sepsis, and I've been in the hospital. I've had near-death moments, and so you really get to a point where you can understand how you have control over it. And my control is what I believe and what I can absorb from others in terms of energy, and that's why I continue to try and give out energy, because I want to get that energy back.
But it's so natural to you. You hear things, you put it together, you sort of create plans, all of those things. Like that level of sort of intuition and execution is incredibly unique.
Well, that's the important part. The important word to me on there is the execution.
Totally.
Like, so many people have the idea, and it may just be a fleeting idea. The beauty of what you do is not only do you listen, but you execute on that, and you put effort to something. That's where the respect comes to me. That's like Tom Peters' quote of strategy is execution. Right? You could have the best strategy in the world unless you execute it well or execute it.
Can you share with us some insight into Gather with Jim?
I started Gather with Jim pretty much the week that I was given the diagnosis. And the reason why I did it was I knew that a lot of people would be asking me how I was, and I just wanted a nice, easy way. I didn't know how I was going to deal with answering that question. So I thought it would be easy to have people have a spot to go to find out where I was. I was always afraid of writing. I never thought I was a good writer. And so I feel much more confident in writing, and I feel joy when I write. So it's been great that way. So the purpose of the blog is to be cathartic for me, to educate people on what I'm going through, to learn for them, and help be part of a shared experience. We have enough funds, we've raised enough funds to get this program going for 5 years now. So in the process, we've got the lead researcher. That person's building the programs, identifying the research programs, and have started. So I feel really good that all the money we've raised so far has started, because we didn't want to wait until after. The programs are needed now. And yeah, so it's a beautiful thing that we've actually got it going, and then we'll be able to benefit from the learnings of these programs, and at one point we'll be able to kick up the research again, the fundraising again. But we've got enough to go for 5 years, which is a beautiful story.
What can you tell our audience about the gym socks?
You've got gym socks on.
Yes. What can you tell them?
That was a fun little, Dave Kelly and Michael Bernard Fitzgerald wanted to do something, and they just picked Friday Sock Company, a local Calgary company, and they put it out there that, and they talked to the Friday Sock Company, and a portion of proceeds from the purchase of those socks went to this fundraising initiative, and they raised over $6,000 through buying socks. And it was the ancillary beauty of it was it created a community of people taking pictures of their socks in these different places and educating people on the cause. And Friday Sock Company learned a lot about giving and the practice of giving, and incorporated that even further into their business. So it's been a pleasure.
Here's a beautiful picture of you and your family wearing the gym socks, and I love that picture.
Here's a photo from Neil Zeller.
Avnish, I want to know something. I want to know what this album means to you.
Now it all makes sense.
He's a sneaky one, that guy.
Yeah, totally. So it's the Soundgarden Super Unknown album.
Open that gatefold up and tell me what you experienced.
This album sort of was my, there's a lady by the name, or a lady now, by the girl then, Eva Shevchik, who used to love Soundgarden. And Eva was cool. You know, she had a really, really good heart. She was such a nice person. She gave, but she had this sort of rocker side about her. And we sat in math class together, and she was in front of me and I was behind. And she's the one that introduced me to Soundgarden. And she was like, you should listen to this. And Eva was super cute at the time. I'm like, yeah, sure, listen to whatever you tell me. Like, I'm in.
Yes.
And then this is a heavy album. There's a lot of sort of darkness in this. But the counter to this album was I was playing saxophone in a jazz band in a concert band in junior high, and it was the moment of like these. I still listen to this album today, and I'm transported back to 14, 15 years old. We traveled California as a part of a jazz band, and this is the album that sort of I brought with me in my Discman, because I sort of had to bring one thing. When I traveled to Singapore, this is the album that was with me. I went to go and see my grandfather when I was 15 years old. As he was aging, just alone. My uncle and my aunt were gonna take a little break, and my grandparents lived with them, and so my dad said, will you go? And I'm like, yeah, 100%. So this sort of part of the upbringing where you're sent off to go and sort of support. And this was the album that was with me through those journeys. And you're like finding yourself. I was an awkward teenager. This is, yeah, wow. This internal part is...
it's the most insane thing.
Yeah,
it's a culmination of incredible visuals, the natural world meeting the energy itself that propels it. And the sun is behind you, black hole sun.
Won't you come?
Black hole sun, won't you come?
What can you tell us about Terry Andrio?
Terry's also a buffalo. Terry and Avnish are both buffaloes, and you know, the buffalo is the spirit animal. You know, and Terry embodies this. You know, a buffalo faces into the storm and protects those. You know, they protect those behind them, and by doing so. And so Terry's that kind of person. He just loves helping people and loves connecting with people, and he's a gem.
I think part of what Terry does better than sort of anybody you've ever met is, you know, that you're in the herd. Yes. You know, and that's sort of the buffalo piece where where he is in his buffalo evolution is one where that he's sort of standing down for all of us, and it's amazing to sort of be a part of it because he makes time. He's a gem, I think, in so many ways. But what he does for the community is sort of the other magnificent piece, is that we're sort of in the herd, but that herd circle is huge, right? It's massive. It's everybody fits into it in one way or another, and that's sort of the roaming buffalo, is that he just sort of brings everybody in wherever he is.
It's the emotional connection to the farm. We weren't talking about us. We weren't talking about ATB. We were talking about the farm. We were talking about the community. We were talking about the industry. We learned a lot from a friend who did the Imported from Detroit series. Mm-hmm. And when they created that first series with M&M, it was all about Detroit, and it was all about the people.
M&M the candy or the wrapper?
No, the wrapper.
Okay. Remember when I told you the story of the two changes in my life? The first change in my cancer journey. The first one was Avnish. Second one was tragically hip. Yeah, nice. Tragically hip. So here I was in the cabin or the cottage. I've been on my first drug that I started, chemotherapy drug, immunotherapy drug, and it totally took me to a dark place. The only time I can truly say I was depressed in my life, like depressed. I didn't like people. I was angry with everything. I had mouth sores. I couldn't taste anything. My mouth hurt. I couldn't move. My joints were sore. It was a really hard time. And my wife walked into the room. I was on my third nap, and it was only 11 o'clock in the morning. And my wife walked into the room and said, Jim, I want to have a conversation with you. She sat on the bed at the end of the bed and said, I think you might be dealing with depression. And I lashed out. I said, you don't know. I'm in this all alone. And as soon as those words came out of my face, I looked at her and I went, who am I? And I saw a tear roll down her eye, and it just makes me emotional now. And all of a sudden I realized that this drug had taken me, the drug and the cancer had taken me to a spot that I'd never been to before, and I didn't quite know how to deal with it. So I stopped taking that drug that day. The next day I ended up in Emerge. I got a fever, so I ended up in emergency in town, had to get there, started on antibiotics, was there for the day, rehydrated, and then got home, back to the cottage. Get back to the cottage and find out that my daughter's best friend's aunt just died of cancer. I go, oh my God, this just keeps spiraling. And then that night was the last concert, the Tragically Hip in Kingston. And so I started watching that, and watched it with my wife and my daughter. And my daughter's dealing with the death of her best friend's aunt. I'm dealing with my stuff. Tracy and Amanda left the room because she was just so emotional. She couldn't handle her father's cancer. And I'd just come out of Emerge, all this tough stuff. But I watched that concert and was so inspired. When he sang Grace and he was screaming for all the people in angst, maybe just people with cancer, but anybody with angst. It was like a euphoria happiness that I'd never had before. And you know, the combination of being off the bad drug, the antibiotics starting to kick in, and dealing with having conversations with my daughter and my wife, that experience with the Tragically Hip. And then I went, it's so much, what Gord Downey was able to do in such a dire time, and how he was able to rally himself because of how important it was to him and how important it was to others. That made me go, you know, that's it. That's where I got from Avnish the connectedness and the spirituality and the mindfulness. I got from Gord Downey optimism. I got positivity. I got a power that you can go through it, you know. And so
let's make it just light before we finish on the last topic here. You know, if Avnish right now was to stop at Chicken on the Way, what would he eat?
2 corn fritters with some honey.
And then
That's
what would you drink with it?
Nothing, just classic.
Wow.
That's it.
2 corn fritters and honey.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Did you know this story?
No, I didn't know the story, but I found there was a pattern with Chicken on the Way in the research.
That's great.
And I have an affinity. So if I was to stop at Chicken on the Way right now, I'd get probably like a Hungry Man. And the Hungry Man, you know, comes with the fritters, the gravy, 5-piece chicken, fries. What I love about the fries is they have wet potatoes that they crush fresh. That's almost very similar to how poutine fries would be cooked in Quebec. And that's the only place really that I know in this city that has the wet fries. So that's why I like to go there. Sometimes it's just to grab the fries or a grape crush, you know, if you really want to go healthy.
If you want to go healthy, get the grape crush.
Gentlemen, this concludes the first episode of Culture Roulette. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to meet today here.
Thanks, Evan. This is awesome.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing me out to this. This is, you know, the river is my life. I love you for this.
What a great day.